everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave
The 25th Doxa Documentary Film Festival is underway in Vancouver, showcasing stories from around the world, including a local short film, Namesake. The film follows Tla'amin Nation as they call on the city of Powell River to consider changing its name, a name associated with colonial figure Israel Wood Powell.
Powell River itself started out as a logging camp, which facilitated the displacement of all of our people onto reserves.
In the film, a resident of the Tla'amin Nation explains what's at stake.
Our names mean something. By erasing those names, we completely cancel out that history.
Today, I'm joined by a director and member of the Tla'amin Nation, Eileen Francis, and ally filmmaker Claudia Medina to talk about the film and what it means for the Tla'amin Nation to reclaim the name. To start, I asked them why they made the film.
So originally when the name change request happened in 2021, myself and Claudia came on as videographers to help record the process. And so we came in 2022. And then we just kept filming year after year as the name change process went on. And so the more footage we recorded, the more we thought about, hey, we could actually make a documentary with this.
I mean, the film centers on the effort to rename the city of Powell River. Why is this name change so important for the Tla'amin Nation?
Personally, for me, knowing how much trauma my families went through and not knowing where to point to, where it stems from, but actually realizing that colonization and Israel Wood Powell and his policies, the potlatch ban, just doesn't feel good anymore. Even if we had original place names in the area already, and then they got pushed aside for English names. So I was hoping this name change process would have brought us all together now, because we all live together now, we're all neighbors. And so I was hoping that we would all create a new future together by deciding how do we want to represent ourselves, be it in English or in the language.
And Eileen, I want to bring this to you on a more personal level. As a member of the Tla'amin Nation, what does it mean for you to tell this story?
When we were still in the early process of the documentary, this is my first feature-length documentary that I've co-directed. And so I turned to Evan Adams because 20 years ago, he made a documentary about our nation. And I remember that feeling of seeing ourselves on the big screen and how I was impacted by that. So I wanted to show my community in a good way, also the Cossack region in a good way. And so myself, being a drone operator, and some other drone operators, we went out and captured the land. And so I didn't want to misconstrue, I wanted people to see my community the way I see it.
And Claudia, For you, what does it mean for you to tell the story as an ally filmmaker?
Yeah, well, I was born here, so I'm a settler born in this region. I grew up here as well, and I left when I was 18. I came back to the community after 25 years, and so for me, it was also a way to have a deeper understanding of the story of the region from the common worldview, and to unlearn the histories that what I'd been taught in schools, which is very much about the colonial story of this town. Always had a sense because I knew something about what had happened, but I was always kind of disturbed that the story of the common history and the way that the town came about was always told from a very narrow point of view, and and so I think it's a way to go deeper and explore and get to know a deeper understanding of the impact of what the mill had and the impact of Israel power and the way that unfolded here, but also to have a better and deeper understanding of the sort of story of common history and the ongoing story, to celebrate that, all the beauty of that story. And so, yeah, it was a way for me to unlearn, learn, and also to share a process together as going forward in a community that we all love, but it's going through major changes, and the mill shut down. It seemed to me that, and those of us on our team, that this was a natural kind of like next step, is that we come together as a community and come up with a new name and go forward and recognize and reconcile the history and the impact that Israel Powell represents. But it's, the history of Canada, really, and in terms of having to understand the truth and then reckon with that truth and then come together and finally move it forward. So that for me was sort of the impetus to want to work together with to make this work.
And now that the story is reaching wider audiences, what does it mean for the both of you to have this film be showcased in the Doxa Documentary Film Festival?
It's interesting that a new audience, because back home we did community screenings. So I really wanted the documentary to take root at home first before it traveled out to these festivals. And thankfully, the reception has been astounding. To be in the room at Doxa, and normally during a Q&A, there's a few people that will have to leave for any reason, but to see the entire audience just sit and want to be engaged in the Q&A, and it's amazing.
And is there a moment in the film that you're especially proud of or that will stay with you?
I think of Evan's answer because Evan raves about the drone shots in the film. And when we were at Hot Docs in Toronto, one of the students asked us, "Why is there so many shots of the land?" And I told him, I kind of think of it as Sla'aman's archival footage, because the city of Powell River had their archive footage from the museum, and in our archives we have a lot of photos but not as much videos. And so I always thought the land is our archive, and so I wanted to highlight it.
And finally, what do the both of you hope audiences can take away from Namesake?
I think for me, it's to feel the story as an invitation to understand that this is a story that isn't just about this place. It's also about coming to terms with the past, but also an invitation to learn and to build relationships.
Yeah, I hope that there's reflections and conversations, and it reminds me how in ceremony we have witnesses, and the role of a witness is to witness what happens that day, but also carry that message to friends and family, and like let people know like what they witnessed. And so I I hope I hope that happens.
That was director and member of the Tla'amin Nation, Eileen Francis, and ally filmmaker Claudia Medina. I am Jacqueline Sung, and that was For the Record on BCIT's The Crow.
Hello and welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Samantha Gibbs, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow. The Code of Practice for Care and Handling of Beef Cattle acts as a baseline of minimum standards for cattle care, from feeding, transportation, and overall well-being of animals. For the first time since 2013, the code is being updated. Many groups like the SPCA are calling for updates and improvements to be made, but what would that look like for local farms? I'm joined today by Brad Hopcott, owner and cattle farmer at Hopcott Farms in Pitt Meadows. They focus on naturally fed, hormone-free beef and seasonal produce. Hi, Brad, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, how are we doing today?
Awesome. So I'm just wondering, what was your initial reaction when you heard that the standards were being updated?
Yeah, no, it's especially since it has been updated since 2013. It's definitely due to get updates, as everything usually is, and obviously the care and well-being of the animals should be first and in how these animals are looked after. So definitely something that is important in our industry.
Of course. And then for any kind of updates that were going to happen, what kind of support would farmers need to realistically be able to meet higher standards?
I mean, overall, in our operation, there's not really many changes that need to happen for us on this end. Like that, as far as I'm aware, everything's up to code, and the animals are transported in a well-being manner. I mean, for any updates that we need to make, I mean, I have to delve into it a little deeper, but maybe there might be some funding if there's any sort of implications we need to make on how the pens are formed, access to certain things. So if there's some funding available, that's something we can definitely take advantage of.
The funding definitely would be helpful in that situation.
Mm.
Are there any specific changes you're hoping to see?
Um, I mean, one thing that like we're a multi-level kind of operation. We raise the animals here on the farm, and we also process them at our own abattoir on site. So one thing that I would like to probably see a little more education on for those that are bringing animals in for slaughter, just to make sure that they're being transported in the most humane way possibly. There's been certain aspects where people have brought in animals in very poor conditions, and we've had to turn them away and even report some to SPCA because we just were not happy with the way the animals were being treated. So I think maybe just more education to the public, those other local maybe hobby farmers that dabble in the livestock industry and deal with smaller volume, but everybody needs to be educated on how these animals need to be treated.
Of course. What are the current ways that animals are being transported typically?
Typically, the animals are transported in a proper livestock trailer, and like anything that's dedicated specifically to that purpose is built that way. But sometimes, like I said, some of these hobby farmers, if they're only raising a few animals a year, in their minds, it's not worth it to buy some mega honking trailer just for their operation. So they kind of do some makeshift things with boxes and back of trucks, and maybe there's some kind of simple format that these people could be educated on, just so that they know if that is the case, then this is what you have to do, and this is how the trailer has to be set up.
Of course, just making sure the animals are safe during that time for sure.
Mhm.
You touched a bit about what you guys do at Popcot and how you guys kind of raise your cattle. Would you be able to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Like we work with ranches all throughout BC, and we purchase the cattle from the ranch. Cattle weighing in from 600 to 1,000 pounds, and then we finish them here on our farm up to about 1,400 pounds. And then from there, the animals are walked over to our processing plant, our abattoir, and that's where we put all the animals through the processing floor and get them all into carcass form. And then the animals are then transported from there to our retail shop where we sell direct from farm to market. And we also wholesale a bit of our beef out to other local markets.
Wonderful. Okay. And then are there any practices that you guys have at the farm that you feel should be more of like a common practice?
I mean, daily animal health checks should be a common practice. I hope that most people are doing. We feed the cattle twice a day in the morning and then again in the evening. And after every feed, the pens are walked through completely, and every animal is for the most part checked individually to make sure that there's no signs of any sort of sickness. And if there is, the animal is then pulled and given the proper medication to get it back to proper health. So I hope this practice is being followed by all in this industry.
Wonderful. That sounds like you guys really put their care first. That's amazing. One thing that I was really surprised by when I was researching this was that they actually don't have a requirement like for the cattle to be checked on, like there isn't a set law. Do you
Hmm.
have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's something that should be mandatory because
Mhm.
if an animal's not checked regularly, like these, sometimes I've had it happen in the past where I've looked the cattle over in the morning and everybody looks great, and then I check again in the afternoon, and then I can see one not feeling well. So it can happen fairly quickly, and if the animals aren't checked for days, then the animal, could be suffering, and that's something that just cannot happen.
Of course. And where I found my information, I think a lot of people do too, is through the SPCA, and they
Hmm.
specifically said they hope to see improvement in space allowances for the animals.
Yes.
Like, what are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of square footage per head that is allowed, and we don't overcrowd our pens. We don't have the need to because uh, we're not running an excessive amount of cattle through our operation. Like we do roughly about 1,000 head a year, and they kind of come in periodically every 3 to 4 months as needed. But our pens are kept open, which I find is also beneficial for health checks. Because when you got a pen that's crammed full to its maximum capacity, it's harder to be able to pinpoint certain animals that may look like they're feeling a little bit off. So by not crowding, that opens up the ability to be able to spot them quicker.
That's amazing. Okay. And what's one thing you'd want people to know about cattle care that they may not already know to just kind of give everyone a better understanding?
Yeah, I mean, even for being able to tell the signs of a sick animal, like it'd be good to have it as well that everybody's educated in that form, like exactly what to look for, because it's something if you're not trained or you're not used to this industry, or then that's something that could be missed. So to really pinpoint those specific signs, senses of the animal that show that they're feeling off. So another
Okay.
education piece, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the signs and senses that you would say to look for?
Yeah, for the most part, an animal would kind of be off to the side of the pen on its own. It'll kind of have its neck stretched out. It'll kind of have a bit of a sad expression upon its face with its kind of ears drooped down. It could have, snotty, dirty nose. It would be another indication. Body cough is another thing to look out for. But those, for the most part, are the most identical signs.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that information.
Hmm.
And then my last question was going to be, do you think there needs to be more education available for the public on how cattle are raised?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what our operation is all about. We're a transparent company that is you know nothing that we're not willing to share with our operation. We want people to understand this industry to help them get a better understanding of where their food comes from and how much work it comes into putting into getting this to their plate.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Brad. And that is all the time I'm going to take of yours today. So I
Okay.
really appreciate your insight and for you being willing to chat with me.
Yeah, not a problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
And that's all for today. Thank you for tuning into For the Record. I'm your host, Samantha Gibbs, and this is 1680 The Crow.
Welcome to our long-form interview show, For the Record. I'm Evan Alfreds, here on BCIT's The Crow. By now, we've all heard about artificial intelligence, or AI. It is becoming more common in all creative fields, including the video production field. We've reached out to a small local commercial video producer to see how he feels about the so-called innovative tech. Taylor Morton is the sole owner and employee of Mort's Media. He focuses on making commercials and social media posts for small local businesses and sports teams. We began our conversation by talking about how he got his start in the industry.
I kind of fluked my way into video production, to be honest. I went to school at Douglas College for business with a concentration in marketing, and it was a 4-year program there, and for the 3rd year of it, I was working at a car dealership in a marketing position. And I thought that I wanted to do marketing as my career, and I was working alongside a photographer there who kind of started teaching me about cameras, and I started to get into that, and then eventually just came to a point where I was like, I don't really want to do this kind of traditional side of marketing that's very analytical. I kind of want to be more on the creative side, so I kind of learned a little bit from him, got a little bit of advice about cameras and stuff like that, and then ended up quitting that job and bought a camera with the money that I saved up, and then kind of just started filming my friends' soccer games, like 4 or 5 soccer games just for free, obviously at the start, just to practice. And then from there, pretty much just filming anything, like anytime I went anywhere with my friends or anything like that, any kind of fun events, I'd just bring my camera and typically shoot video, sometimes photo, but I tend to like video more. So I did that for pretty much a whole summer, and then that was going into the 4th year at Douglas College with my business program, and I saw they had a job application for a content producer for the athletics and recreation program. So I was like, okay, this could be a decent opportunity, and it was a paying one, which is pretty rare that early on in a creative career. So I was like, okay, this sounds great. It was actually a pretty old listing. They had it up from the previous year and they hadn't updated it for the upcoming year. So I was like, okay, like I might not even get a response back on this, but I applied for that and heard back, and he was like, oh, like he kind of almost forgot about the position really, and like he's like, oh, let me update this and then put the position a bit more back together with like some updated criteria for what he was looking for. But I was pretty much the only one that applied for it because no one else really knew about it, and ended up getting it. And that's kind of like what I would say was the turning point, because throughout that last year of school, I was basically filming either soccer, volleyball, basketball, baseball, or softball every single weekend, and most weekends multiple games, because there'd be the men's and the women's games would be on the same day, and then they'd also often play multiple days throughout the weekend. So it was just a crazy crash course in learning sports videography in particular, but also videography as a whole. Yeah, I'd say like I'd attribute most of what I learned to just like insane amounts of repetition and very quick turnaround. Sports is like one of the fastest paced industries, and you kind of have to learn how to do things really, really quickly and get things out really, really quickly, which I'm very thankful for, having learned that early on, as opposed to kind of starting in maybe a slower industry and then moving to something like sports where it's fast paced. I'm more used to the fast paced stuff now, and very welcome to the things that are a little bit slower. But yeah, so then did that for a semester or 2 semesters there is my full last year of school, and then graduated from Douglas College, and I was kind of like in this weird waiting room kind of point where I was like, oh, should I try to find like a full-time job? Because I knew I wanted at that point to do something creative. I knew I wanted to do videography or photography or some kind of content production, video production. But it was kind of like a crossroads where I was trying to decide, like, oh, do I go with a full-time position? Do I try to do this as my own business? And right after I graduated, I was kind of trying to do both. Like, I was looking for a full-time job because that just felt steady and it felt like a smart thing to do, and it's kind of what my parents wanted me to do. And then at the same time, because it was kind of a tough job market at the time, right after COVID, there wasn't a lot of success looking for jobs. So I was like, okay, well, might as well kind of start my own business at the same time and see how that goes. So started my own business doing video production and photography, and reached out to a few clients. Actually had like pretty decent success with reaching out to clients, considering I didn't have like a ton of experience in the fields I was trying to work for. I sent out a proposal to automotive paint renewal company in Port Moody, and somehow by some miracle heard back, and he was excited to work with me and filmed a couple ads for him. That worked out pretty well for both of us. That was kind of my first big client, and kind of the first time I was like, okay, like this maybe is feasible. And then sent out a couple other proposals, construction company that happened to be my friend's older brother's company, so a little bit of an in there. So that one was not quite as much luck involved, but not necessarily like pure skill that I got that one, but just a couple clients here and there. And then I kind of saw some other full-time job openings. I was like, okay, maybe I'll apply to this. So I saw one with the Vancouver Canadians. They were looking for a content producer. So I applied for that one. And then also the Grey Cup Festival was in Vancouver in 2024. So I applied for a similar role there. And ended up getting both of those at the same time, which was pretty exhausting. And again, just like a crazy crash course in learning video production even more, and such a fast-paced environment, and yeah, just like crazy hours every week. But I like absolutely loved it. Especially with the Canadians, like filming for them was probably the most fun I've ever had filming sports. It's just like such a cinematic environment there. The ballpark looks amazing. So yeah, filmed for both those teams at the same time, completely exhausted, but I loved it and I learned so much from it. Looking back on it, it was super valuable experience. But by the end of it, I was like, okay, like I definitely cannot keep up this pace. So at that point, I kind of got offers for extending contracts for both of them at the end of those seasons, and I turned both those down because I was just like, I've seen so many other people doing kind of the freelance, like their own business kind of thing with more corporate clients, and that just seemed really attractive to me to be able to kind of build my own schedule doing this sort of thing. So turned both those contracts down, which was like pretty risky, and just kind of did my own thing for a while, and it ended up working out great. I made like a bunch of different connections with companies that I work with now through those two original jobs. So I'd say that helped a ton, like having some kind of full-time experience and having some contacts to fall back on for clients when I was first getting going with my video production business. And then, yeah, basically about a year and a half now, I've just been doing my own thing with my own video production business, mostly working with corporate clients, so dentist offices, and just maybe more on the boring side. It's not quite as exhilarating as shooting sports was, but it's also a much more relaxed pace, and I feel like I can manage it a little bit better, and it feels healthier. So yeah, I feel like I've found like a pretty nice balance now where I can kind of rely more on the corporate clients for income and living off of that. And if there's something that pops up in sports, I can still say like, oh yeah, I can shoot that. And like in my mind, I know it's not going to be, quite as high paying as some of the corporate shoots, but it's still fun and it keeps it interesting for me. So yeah.
So AI video platforms like Sora, ChatGPT, stuff like that, they're pretty popular now. How do you feel about those platforms, especially like running your own video production business?
For sure, yeah. It's super interesting time in, the world as a whole, but especially video production right now with how good AI has gotten. It's pretty scary. I would even say now it's often indistinguishable from real video, and it's only going to get better. So it's definitely a bit of a scary time. But for me personally, it hasn't really affected me too much. I don't really use it in my own business. I've never had a client ask me for AI video. And I don't really feel like I've ever kind of lost clients because of AI video. I find that most of what I do is shooting events, shooting things that are real, and to create like an event recap video with AI just kind of wouldn't really make any sense because it's just like, it's not real. Like, it's not the people that were at the event. It's not how the event really took place. So it's not too big of a concern for me, and I don't personally use it much in my own production. There'll be like times here and there where I'm like, okay, if I have like a still frame on like a locked off shot, maybe I want to extend the sky a little bit so I can have a little bit more room to play with. I'll use generative AI in that sense to kind of give myself a bit more room in a frame. But I've never used it to kind of full on create, you know, a fully AI generated video. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it right now.
So you don't believe you've ever had any loss in customers because of AI video platforms?
No, and I don't really foresee too much of a scenario where I would, because a lot of the stuff I'm doing, it's like, you know, filming with, like, for example, I filmed with Delaney's Coffee Shop for their grand opening event, and what that video consisted of was basically, you know, the grand opening, tons of people lined up outside this coffee shop, filming all of that, filming their reactions to the new space, and then I also interviewed the owner of the coffee shop, and, you know, it's kind of just like a face-to-face kind of interview where we're just talking about the coffee shop, and it just, everything about that is, in my mind, something that wouldn't even be valuable to recreate with AI, because it wouldn't really be real. It wouldn't resonate that much with the customers. Even the owner of the coffee shop would just, I feel very strange about that if like I recreated him to answer questions about his coffee shop and that sort of thing. I do see for, you know, like for example, like a landscape shot where like, oh, like we need a drone shot of, you know, Stanley Park and we don't want to get the permit to do it. So like maybe we can just recreate that with AI. Like I can kind of see that sort of thing for certain shots where it's like, this is just too much of a pain to get like authentically. And so maybe, you know, big companies use AI for something like that, but I haven't run into it so far. I'm sure I will at some point, but it's not something that's too big of a concern for me right now.
So besides what you were kind of just saying with like a big company maybe wanting a shot of Stanley Park, do you believe there's any other place for AI in video production? And I will say we're just running a little short on time, so just a brief summary.
Yeah, I think there are probably places for it. I don't love it, to be honest with you. It doesn't excite me to like be able to just type in a prompt and get a video out. Like I don't really find it that cool, to be honest. Like I've never really like seen an AI video where I'm just like, oh, that's an awesome video. It's more like the reaction is like, wow, that looks super real, which is scary. But the reaction is never like, oh man, that's like super awesome. It's kind of just like, ah, damn, that looks pretty real. But it's not like, yeah. So I'd say that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Well, thank you for your time, Taylor. It was nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you as well.
Thank you for listening. This is Evan Alfreds with BCIT's The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, you know, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to